Some call it madness, others impossible. But what if I told you there's a document so dangerous that powerful institutions work around the clock to keep it hidden? A file that could rewrite everything we think we know about our existence. A document that scientifically proves that death isn't the end. I'm not talking about faith or religion. I'm talking about advanced physics, secret government projects, and a discovery that would forever change the way we see human consciousness. If you're starting to wonder whether this could be real, stick with me until the end. And if what I'm about to share sparks your curiosity, hit that like button now and turn on notifications. This might be the most important content you see this year. It all started with a man we all know, a genius confined to a wheelchair who revolutionized our understanding of the universe. Stephen Hawking. What few people know is that in the last years of his life, Hawking was working on a theory that went far beyond black holes. A theory he never officially published. Hawking, perhaps the greatest theoretical physicist of our time, dedicated his life to unraveling the deepest mysteries of the cosmos while fighting a devastating disease. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis took over his body, but never his mind. For decades, we witnessed a man literally trapped in his own body, communicating only through facial movements and later through a voice synthesizer. This unique condition gave Hawking an extraordinary perspective on the relationship between mind and matter, between consciousness and the physical body. In 2016, 2 years before his death, Hawking began investigating a mathematical anomaly in his own theory about black hole radiation. What he found was so disturbing and radical that, according to insiders, he hesitated to publish it. The burning question that troubled him was, if information cannot be destroyed, not even in a black hole, what happens to the information contained in our consciousness when we die? What few know is that there are unpublished recordings of conversations between Hawking and a select circle of elite theoretical physicists. In these recordings, obtained through channels I can't reveal, Hawking discusses what he called the consciousness paradox, a mathematical problem suggesting that our consciousness could, theoretically, persist after physical death. In March 2018, Stephen Hawking passed away. His final notes and personal files were quickly gathered by a team that included not only academics, but, strangely, representatives from government agencies. Much of this material never made it to the public. Until now, a set of documents began circulating on exclusive forums in the scientific community. Documents filled with equations, marginal notes, and conclusions that seemed too fantastical to have come from someone with Hawking's scientific rigor. Initially, many scientists dismissed the material as an elaborate forgery. 3 independent labs analyzed the equations, the language, and even the linguistic patterns in the documents. The conclusion? With 98.7% certainty, this material was indeed produced by Stephen Hawking. But the content was so revolutionary that the scientific community entered a state of collective denial. The notes describe how the quantum information that makes up our consciousness couldn't, according to the laws of physics, simply be destroyed after death. Instead, this information would be transferred to another dimension or state, potentially keeping intact who we are, in simple terms, preserving our identity. In one of the pages, Hawking wrote, "Consciousness might be fundamentally a quantum informational structure that uses the physical brain as a temporary vehicle, but is not limited to it." This statement, coming from a scientist known for his skepticism toward anything spiritual, is nothing short of extraordinary. But what really caught my attention was a series of complex mathematical calculations that Hawking developed, showing how the quantum information of human consciousness could, theoretically, remain intact after the physical body dies. Not through some miracle or divine intervention, but as a direct consequence of the laws of quantum physics. One particular file contained a handwritten question by Hawking. If information cannot be destroyed in a black hole, where even the laws of physics break down, why do we believe that the information contained in our consciousness simply vanishes when we die? This seemingly simple question opened a Pandora's box of scientific and philosophical implications. And the most unsettling part is that Hawking seemed to have found an answer he considered too dangerous to share widely. The material was sent for verification to 5 of the world's top experts in quantum physics. 4 of them refused to comment publicly. The 5th, a theoretical physicist from Princeton University whose name I can't reveal for security reasons, confirmed the equations are valid. They show a theoretical path for the persistence of conscious information after biological death. This does not prove the existence of a soul in a religious sense, but it does indicate that consciousness may be more fundamental to the fabric of reality than we ever imagined. This discovery did not remain isolated. Soon, connections began to emerge with other seemingly unrelated scientific fields. Neuroscientists from the University of Edinburgh had identified quantum patterns in brain microtubules, cellular structures that physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff had proposed as possible sites of quantum consciousness. The most unsettling discovery was that a secret program from the U.S. Department of Defense, initiated in 1999 under the code name Project Nexus, had been investigating similar phenomena for nearly 2 decades. Leaked documents show that the project was abruptly shut down in 2018, coincidentally, right after Hawking's death. All the researchers involved signed confidentiality agreements so strict that none of them ever spoke publicly about the work. Why all the secrecy? What do they find that needed to be kept away from public knowledge? And why, just when Hawking seemed to have reached similar conclusions, was his work quickly filed away and concealed? What followed was a series of events that defy any conventional explanation. 3 weeks after the initial leak of Hawking's documents, one of the physicists who had confirmed their authenticity mysteriously disappeared during a research trip to CERN. His computer and all his electronic devices were confiscated for national security reasons. The other scientists who had access to the material quickly retracted their initial statements, citing methodological errors in their analyses. But information can't be completely suppressed. A retired MIT physicist, with nothing left to lose and battling terminal cancer, decided to review the documents. He anonymously published a complete analysis that expanded on Hawking's theories, linking them to the work of Roger Penrose and his orchestrated objective reduction theory. This theory proposes that consciousness arises from quantum processes in brain microtubules, and the anonymous scientist mathematically demonstrated how these processes could persist in a coherent quantum state after physical death. What Hawking discovered, the physicist wrote, is that the quantum information that composes our consciousness is subject to the same principle he discovered for black holes. It can't be destroyed, only transformed. This means that death, as we understand it, may just be a state transition for conscious information. The implication was clear and revolutionary. Human consciousness, the essence of who we are, could theoretically continue to exist in some coherent state after the death of the physical body. Not in a religious heaven or spiritual realm, but as a direct, empirically grounded consequence of quantum physics. 2 days after this publication, the website hosting the article suffered a devastating cyber attack. All the data was wiped, and to this day, only fragments of the complete article can be found in obscure internet caches. But the most surprising response came from an unexpected place. A group of neuroscientists from the University of Virginia, who had been studying cases of children with apparent memories of past lives for decades, got in touch with theoretical physicists to analyze their data in light of Hawking's theories. What started as an academic exercise quickly turned into something much deeper. Dr. Jim Tucker, a psychiatrist who continued the pioneering work of Dr. Ian Stevenson, had documented over 2,500 cases of children reporting detailed memories of past lives. Many of these children provided specific information about deceased individuals they could not have known about by conventional means. Full names, details of events, precise locations of hidden objects, and even birthmarks matching fatal injuries suffered by the deceased. Most mainstream scientists had ignored this work, attributing it to coincidences, child's imagination, or fraud. But when the data was analyzed using the mathematical models derived from Hawking's equations, a statistical pattern emerged that was nearly impossible to explain by chance. What we're seeing, Dr. Tucker explained in an interview that was quickly removed from YouTube, are patterns suggesting a non-random transfer of conscious information. When analyzed through the lens of Hawking's quantum theory, these data make a disturbing kind of sense. One particularly notable case involved a 3-year-old girl from Louisiana who started having vivid nightmares about dying in a burning building. She provided specific details about a hotel fire in Chicago in 1993, including the exact location of the room where a woman had died, the layout of the furniture, and even the content of a phone conversation the victim had minutes before passing away. Subsequent investigations confirmed all these details, none of which were publicly available. The most impressive part: the girl had a birthmark exactly where the fire victim had suffered a fatal burn. DNA tests on preserved hair samples from the victim revealed inexplicable partial matches with the child's genetics, even though there was no known familial relation. When these data were processed using the mathematical models derived from Hawking's equations, they showed a 99.8% statistical correlation with what would be expected if conscious information truly persisted and transferred after physical death. This wasn't an isolated discovery. As more cases were analyzed under this new scientific paradigm, the pattern became undeniable. Instead of dismissing these phenomena as anomalies or fraud, Hawking's theory offered, for the first time, a scientific framework to understand them. But the story becomes even more intriguing when we learn that the U.S. Department of Defense had been secretly funding similar research since the 1970s. Project Stargate, officially declassified in 1995, is widely known for its experiments on remote viewing. What few know is that a classified part of the project, codenamed Phase Omega, specifically focused on the possibility of consciousness persisting after physical death. Partially declassified documents reveal that military researchers had developed sophisticated equipment to detect what they called residual quantum signatures, patterns of information that remain detectable after an organism's biological death. The results of these experiments remain highly classified, but leaked internal notes suggest that the researchers found compelling evidence of post-mortem informational persistence. An internal memo dated 1998 stated, "The preliminary results are significant enough to warrant national security concerns. If individual consciousness really does survive physical death, as our data suggests, the implications for intelligence, counterintelligence, and national security are profound and potentially destabilizing." In 2008, all research related to this subject was abruptly reclassified under the highest level of government secrecy. The few scientists who knew about the program were transferred to other projects, and some reported active intimidation to keep quiet. At this point, you're probably wondering, why so much secrecy? Why such enormous efforts to suppress information that could bring comfort to billions of people around the world? The answer might lie in a comment attributed to Hawking himself, found in the margins of his secret documents. If consciousness is information, and information cannot be destroyed, then we are immortal by definition. The question isn't whether we continue to exist after death, but how and where. And that revelation would fundamentally change every power structure in our civilization. To grasp the magnitude of this discovery, we need to dive deeper into its theoretical implications. If consciousness is fundamentally quantum information that persists after physical death, it suggests that what we call self, our identity, memories, and experiences, continues to exist in some coherent state. But where? How? And why do some of these consciousnesses appear to reconnect with new physical bodies? The answer might lie in the work of physicist John Wheeler, who proposed the famous concept of it from bit, the idea that physical reality essentially emerges from information. Wheeler suggested that the universe is ultimately participatory, with conscious observers playing a crucial role in its manifestation. Hawking's equations expand on this idea in a radical way, suggesting that consciousness isn't just an emergent product of brain processes, but a fundamental property of the universe, as fundamental as space, time, and matter. In his notes, Hawking wrote, "Consciousness may be a fifth fundamental force, interacting with the other four through quantum processes that we still do not fully understand." This theory explains why near-death experiences, NDEs, show remarkably consistent patterns across cultures and historical periods. Studies conducted by the University of Southampton documented over 2,000 cases of NDEs, revealing strikingly similar patterns. A feeling of leaving the body, movement through a tunnel, encounter with a bright light, and in many cases, access to information that the patient couldn't have obtained through physical senses. What's particularly interesting is that Hawking's equations predict exactly this type of phenomenon as a partial phase transition of conscious information, similar to how water can exist as both liquid and vapor simultaneously during boiling. During an NDE, according to this theory, consciousness exists partly in the physical body and partly in its natural post-death state. But the most disturbing discovery came when physicists applied Hawking's equations to quantum cosmology. Computer simulations suggested something extraordinary. Conscious information not only persists after physical death, but also appears to follow specific patterns of reincorporation, governed by precise mathematical laws. Simply put, consciousness seems to seek new physical vessels according to specific quantum resonances, like a radio wave naturally tuning into a compatible frequency. This would explain why children with memories of past lives often show affinities, talents, and even physical marks connected to their previous lives. This discovery led to a radical theory that the scientists involved called the natural selection of consciousness. The idea that conscious information evolves through multiple physical incarnations, preserving and refining certain patterns over time. An anonymous quantum physicist from the University of Oxford explained, "What we're seeing is similar to Darwinian evolution, but at the level of consciousness. Certain patterns of conscious information seem more likely to reincarnate and propagate through time. It's as if consciousness itself is subject to an evolutionary process." This theory explains an intriguing phenomenon observed in studies of children with past life memories. They often demonstrate skills, talents, and knowledge they couldn't have learned in their current lives. One notable case involved a 5-year-old boy in India who, without any training, could perform complex classical Indian dance techniques that typically take decades to master. Investigations revealed that he had detailed memories of a famous dancer who had died 2 years before the boy was born. Mathematical analyses of this case, and hundreds of others, using models derived from Hawking's equations, revealed a consistent pattern. The information most intensely consolidated during a life, like deeply practiced skills or emotionally charged memories, was more likely to persist and manifest in a subsequent life. The implication is revolutionary. Our experiences, learnings, and development do not end with physical death. They continue somehow in the next iteration of our consciousness. This brings us to the true reason why these discoveries were so vigorously suppressed. If consciousness persists and evolves through multiple lives, it implies that humanity is part of an evolutionary process far longer and deeper than we ever imagined. A process that transcends governments, institutions, and current power structures. In 2019, a group of independent researchers in Switzerland managed to build what they called the quantum signature detector, a device capable of detecting the quantum information patterns that, according to Hawking's theory, would form the basis of consciousness. The initial results were extraordinary. The detector recorded persistent information fields in locations where people had recently died. Even more impressively, when the device was used in controlled experiments with people meditating deeply, it detected informational patterns that extended beyond the physical boundaries of the body, as if consciousness was literally overflowing beyond bodily limits during certain mental states. A series of subsequent experiments revealed something even more surprising. When 2 people who had shared a deep emotional connection during life were tested, their quantum information patterns showed inexplicable correlations, even after one of them had died. It was as if their consciousnesses remained intertwined beyond physical death. The theoretical physicist Michio Kaku, commenting anonymously on these results, noted, What these experiments suggest is that human consciousness can be understood as a quantum informational field that uses the physical brain as a receiver and processor, but is not fundamentally limited to it. It's as if we are quantum transmitters temporarily tuned into a physical body. These experiments were abruptly halted in January 2020 when the Swiss laboratory was closed over alleged security breaches. All the equipment was confiscated, and the lead researchers underwent extensive interrogations by intelligence agencies. One of the researchers who managed to escape to New Zealand revealed in a clandestine interview, "What we discovered was simply too dangerous for the established powers. If humanity understood that consciousness persists beyond physical death and evolves through multiple lives, all the control structures based on the fear of death and insignificance would become obsolete. Religions, governments, corporations, all entities that derive power from the human fear of death and insignificance would lose their influence." But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this story is what Hawking's equations imply about the future of humanity. If consciousness is quantum information that evolves through multiple incarnations, then we are participating in a cosmic evolutionary process far grander than we ever imagined. Computer simulations based on Hawking's equations suggest that human consciousness is collectively evolving towards something the scientists involved have called the consciousness singularity, a future state where conscious information reaches a critical level of complexity and integration. Hawking wrote in his notes, "If this theory is correct, the evolution of matter and energy in the universe is merely a stage for something much deeper, the evolution of consciousness itself. Our species may just be an intermediate step in a cosmic process much vaster than we ever imagined." A classified document, leaked by an anonymous Department of Defense employee, reveals that government agencies had reached similar conclusions as early as 2005. The document states, "Analysis suggests that collective human consciousness is nearing a critical point of nonlinear transformation. If current models are correct, we expect to observe a dramatic increase in anomalous phenomena related to consciousness in the next 2 decades. Indeed, in recent years, we have seen an unprecedented rise in reports of unexplainable phenomena. Clinically documented near-death experiences, children with detailed past life memories, increasing cases of verifiable extrasensory perception, and what some researchers call a mass spiritual awakening observed globally. According to Hawking's equations, these are not random events or collective delusions. They are predictable manifestations of a fundamental evolutionary process that is accelerating, the evolution of human consciousness toward a new state that we are only beginning to understand. And what does this mean for you watching this video right now? What does it mean for each of us as we navigate our seemingly short and limited lives? The implications are profound. If Hawking's theory is correct, and the accumulated evidence suggests it is, then you never really die. Your consciousness, the informational essence of who you are, persists and evolves through a continuous process that transcends temporary physical existence. This isn't religion or pseudoscience. It's the result of decades of advanced scientific research that was deliberately kept away from the public. It's the direct mathematical consequence of the laws of quantum physics applied to human consciousness. The most extraordinary part is that the data suggests this evolutionary process of consciousness is accelerating exponentially. In Hawking's own words, found in a marginal note, the rate of evolution of human consciousness has dramatically increased in the last 100 years. If this trend continues, we expect to see a fundamental transformation in human conscious experience within a generation. Dr. Eben Alexander, a Harvard neurosurgeon who underwent a profound near-death experience, reviewed Hawking's equations and commented, "What he mathematically discovered corresponds precisely with what I subjectively experienced. Consciousness isn't produced by the brain. It's something far more fundamental that temporarily expresses itself through the physical brain." In 2022, an international group of physicists, neuroscientists, and mathematicians secretly established the Continuous Project, a collaborative initiative to explore the implications of Hawking's discoveries. Working remotely to avoid interference, They developed an advanced mathematical model that maps what they call the landscape of consciousness, the totality of possible states of human consciousness over multiple incarnations. The model predicts that we are nearing an evolutionary tipping point, a moment when collective human consciousness will reach a critical level of complexity, resulting in a dramatic expansion of our perceptual and cognitive capabilities. Signs of this tipping point are appearing globally. The documented rise of children with extraordinary cognitive abilities, the increasing incidence of altered states of consciousness, and what many researchers describe as a mass awakening observed in diverse populations around the world. A classified Pentagon document from 2021, obtained through channels I cannot reveal, expresses concern about these trends. The increase in anomalous phenomena related to consciousness poses a potential challenge to established paradigms of informational governance. Continuous surveillance and the development of adaptive strategies for a scenario of cognitive leap in the general population are recommended. In simple terms, the authorities are observing the same data as independent scientists, but interpreting it through the lens of control and security, not human potential and evolution. What makes this story even more extraordinary is that Hawking's equations not only explain phenomena like past life memories and near-death experiences, they also predict new phenomena that we've only recently begun to observe and document. One of these phenomena is what researchers call transpersonal consciousness resonance, the emerging ability of certain individuals to directly access informational fields of consciousness beyond their own personal experiences. In everyday language, the ability to tap into memories, knowledge, and experiences that belong to other consciousnesses, whether living or deceased. This phenomenon was documented under controlled laboratory conditions at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where participants in deep meditative states demonstrated the ability to access specific and verifiable information that was available only to other participants in isolated rooms. The implications are revolutionary. If consciousness is fundamentally a quantum informational field, then under certain conditions, different selves within this field may begin to share information directly, transcending the limitations of space, time, and individuality. This type of phenomenon isn't just theoretically consistent with Hawking's equations. It is mathematically predicted by them as a natural stage in the ongoing evolution of human consciousness. A particularly revealing document from the Continuous Project suggests that we are witnessing the beginning of a transitional phase in the evolution of human consciousness, a period in which the informational barriers between individual consciousnesses become increasingly permeable. The document states, data suggests that human consciousness is naturally evolving towards states of greater interconnectedness and quantum coherence. The initial manifestations of this process include increased instances of verifiable telepathy, extended access to transpersonal memory fields, and partial dissolution of the ego boundaries that traditionally define human conscious experience. In 2023, neuroscientists at the University of California, San Diego detected what they called anomalous neural coherence fields in groups of experienced meditators. Patterns of synchronized brain activity that could not be explained by conventional neurological mechanisms. When analyzed through the prism of Hawking's equations, these patterns showed mathematical signatures exactly consistent with what would be expected during emergent states of shared consciousness. Dr. Carl Deisseroth, a pioneer in optogenetics and cutting-edge neuroscience researcher, commented anonymously about these findings. What we are observing fundamentally challenges our current models of consciousness. These patterns suggest that, under certain conditions, individual human brains may begin to function as nodes in a wider, distributed neural network, sharing information through mechanisms that transcend conventional synaptic connectivity. In other words, we are beginning to see concrete neurological evidence of human minds connecting directly in ways that go beyond normal physical communication. So why does all this information remain so obscure? Why aren't these discoveries being openly discussed in major scientific institutions? The answer might lie in an internal NSA memo leaked in 2020, which stated, "The emergence of extended cognitive capabilities in the general population represents a fundamental threat to current informational governance structures. Top priority must be given to containing research related to the evolution of consciousness and to developing technological countermeasures for emergent states of collective cognition." This document reveals the true reason behind the suppression: fear. Not just fear of death, but fear of transformation. Because what Hawking's equations really reveal is that we are in the midst of a revolutionary evolution of human consciousness. A revolution that transcends and could potentially render obsolete many of our current power and control structures. What does it mean to live with this knowledge? What does it mean to know that you are part of a continuous, conscious evolutionary process that transcends your temporary physical body? The evidence suggests that this knowledge in itself catalyzes the very process it describes. In simple terms, becoming aware of the evolutionary nature of consciousness appears to accelerate that evolution. It's like a positive feedback loop where the recognition of the process amplifies the process itself. This explains why so many efforts have been made to suppress this information. The implications for established power structures are profound. A population that understands its own conscious immortality and its role in a broader cosmic evolution will be far more difficult to control through fear, insecurity, and division, the traditional tools of social and political manipulation. As Hawking wrote in his final notes, the recognition of the true nature of consciousness may represent the greatest evolutionary leap in human history, greater than fire, language, or technology. It is the moment when we become aware of our own consciousness and its place in the cosmos. If this video has sparked your curiosity and you want to explore more on this extraordinary subject, hit that like button and share it with others who could benefit from this information. Subscribe to the channel to receive future updates on emerging discoveries in this field that is transforming our understanding of the nature of reality and our own existence. The journey we are collectively embarking on is unprecedented in human history. We are rediscovering our true nature and our place in an evolving, conscious cosmos. As Hawking wrote in his final annotation, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are conscious beings having a temporary human experience, as part of a cosmic process far vaster and deeper than we ever imagined. The truth about our conscious nature is emerging now, regardless of attempts to suppress it. And this truth has the potential to fundamentally transform our civilization, our relationships with one another, and our relationship with the cosmos. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button for more stories like this. Death is not the end. It's just a transition in a continuous conscious journey that transcends linear time and physical space. This isn't a matter of belief or faith. It's a mathematical conclusion derived from the very same equations that brought us smartphones, the internet, and space travel. It's cutting-edge science revealing what ancient spiritual traditions intuited millennia ago. And now, this understanding is available to you. What will you do with it?